This is the Always Go Far podcast. I'm Patrick. I'm here with Khoi. And essentially, we're just good mates that have got a background in coaching, in sales, in performance and success. And we're just going to, riff on like what different topics are over the next couple of episodes and topics to kind of expand some of the knowledge and things that we see within our own lives, within our clients' lives and the people around us to help you guys go further, go far, essentially. So my co-host here is Khoi.
Hey guys, how are you?
Welcome. So good to meet you. It's been ages since we last spoke. And so we were kind of thinking, like coming into this, what would be a great idea? What would be like a topic, a hot topic at the moment that there might be a different perspective on? Because quite often it's like 2023, it's the new year. We're recording this on the 4th of Jan. And so many people like talk about goals. So many people talk about what's their intention for 2023? How are people going to set up? How are they going to plan? Like, we want to try and cut through what we've seen that works and what doesn't in like the past years on our own success, our client success, and like people that we know success to figure out, is goals actually the thing that you need to do, or are there other things around that? And so, Khoi, I guess for the first question is like, have you set goals for 2023 yet?
Oh man. Yeah, I would say that I've set some goals. They're intangible at the moment. There's always tangible goals that you can have around career or work or money. But I think for me, it's like the struggle of, okay, what's realistic for me? Because you always want to aim higher than what you've got, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, okay, so then it's like, unless you've had the past experience of achieving those goals, then what will you do, or how will you do it moving forward? And in saying that though, we're talking about future goals and how to plan forward and, what has been successful. I think, we've been talking, we had a workshop that we did just before Christmas together in our coaching mastermind. And what I kind of noticed, I don't know about you, but what I kind of noticed is that we did an activity to review on the past year. So I'm curious as well. Have you personally looked at what you've done in 2022? Did you goal set at the start of 2022? Did you achieve those goals? If you did set them, what's kind of been your take on it?
Yeah, I love that. Like, there's so many things in terms of like the tangible goals versus like intangible goals, and the idea that sometimes people kind of focus on some tangible things or untangible things. And when we went to Sydney and we had the day in the mastermind of reflecting on 2022, figuring out like what had happened, what had worked and what didn't. And we had to kind of pull apart, what worked and what didn't, and effectively what we want to do now for the next year. And so for me, 2022, it was a really, really fascinating year because things didn't quite go as planned. At the end, I ate dog food. You got an amazing video of that. That's up on all the socials. It was disgusting. And so there was a lot of stuff in there of not actually reaching that goal, not actually getting like a tangible target for me. And it took me a little while to try and unpack what did that mean? What did that mean around goals and not achieving it? Because quite often when we process the goals, when we try to pick apart the things that didn't work, it happens in the times when we weren't successful and the times that we didn't kind of create the success that we wanted. And so it's kind of questions around, was it the right goal? Should I have set a goal? Should I have set a punishment of eating dog food? Is that the right way to be able to go out to success in 2023? And so for you, what's probably one of the best ways that you look at to question whether or not the past year is successful, knowing that you've got to get feedback on the past in order to project it into the future to know what direction you want to take?
Good question. All I'm thinking right now is the dog food, and you're kind of smelling like that dog food for just about 3 hours after you ate it.
Yeah, 3 hours. I ate like some gum, like 5 minutes in, you're like, good choice. God, should have smashed more mints.
Yeah. But yeah, reviewing what you did in the past year to bring it forward, I guess it's hard to, when I think back about, maybe when you're in your early 20s, in your teens, and start talking about goals, like, what do you want? What do you really want as a goal? I'm one of those people that didn't have those goals, and I'm still kind of struggling to find a goal that I'm connected with, whether it's like emotionally or just driven by it, or and I'll have those little goals. But in saying that, what you said before of, when you review the past year, it's like, okay, so did I achieve those goals, and how do I move it forward? I guess the easiest one that we can kind of relate to is maybe health, because we know and we feel, we feel in, like, if I was to look back on the start of the year, 2022, I think I was somewhat fit. Even though I probably was a little bit lazy during over the Christmas period. Can't even remember if I had a gym membership back then. I'm sure I did.
Yeah, who doesn't have a gym membership? Like, you got to have one at some point. You don't really remember whether you got one now. Sometimes, like, so many people are like, it's part of them. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. But I would say that, when you review it, for me, I had probably a really strong 3 or 4 months where I was just running 3 or 4 times a week. For me, 5Ks is a lot. So doing that, and pumping iron, just getting a bit stronger. So for me, it's like a good 3 or 4 months. And for me, I understand, again, this is just for my level of fitness, is I just want to be fit enough to have like blood flowing through my body, having that blood flow through to my brain, use my mental energy. That's probably just the most important thing. So if I spent, I don't know, half the year doing nothing, which, to be honest, I probably have been doing that for the past few months, apart from my Kung Fu training, I feel like I need to do a bit more. But in saying that, I've probably, if I was to review the past 2 years, then I'd probably say I've been the fittest I've been in a long time.
Yeah. Like, there's kind of 2 things that I can take out of it. One of them is like how you've defined the success or what you want to achieve in one area, as well as like the expectation that you've had over the last couple of years. And so we've had like very different perspectives or goals in terms of fitness, in the sense of, you were talking about like, just running 5K, and I've done like ultra marathons, which are over marathons. However, we go into the dojo, you're going to whoop my ass from here to Kingdom Come in just about anything. And so it's kind of one of the big things is like, how do we define success? What are the metrics that for us an achievement, or what is like a pass mark? What are we aiming for? What's the intention of the thing that we're doing? And like, health is like probably one of the most important things that we have. And it all slips up all the time. Like, I would say that I'm not the fittest that I've ever been right now, but over the past 3 years, I would say that the level of fitness I had was a ridiculous amount. Like, it was phenomenal. And so when people kind of define the success of literally just be fit, or to be fit enough to be able to go to work, or to be fit enough for kids or for family, or whatever it is, you've got to figure out like how you define that. If it's something really simple, or if it's something that you want to go crazy on. Like, if you want to like send something to the extreme, it's a different definition of success, and what it takes to get there is really different. I'm sure you'd probably see that within the martial arts space of what is it taking you to get through all the belts and to keep training on? Is probably a better question.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta, if after switching back and forth to the conversation of what is the goals, and then we relate to successes, then I bring up the question of is it a category of success? Then do we focus on categories? Do we focus on, is it health? Is it money? Is it career? Is it work? Is it business? Do we then break it down like that, or there's some people that probably, depending if they're down in the dumps or maybe they're super successful. Man, really, really getting to the crux of it, or how deep this can go. Are you then the person who's away driven or toward driven to think about those goals? Are you the super successful person who maybe makes 10 million a year but feels like a failure because I haven't reached 50 million a year? Yeah.
And that kind of comes back to like what you were saying before, is like the expectations of that. Like, what are the expectations that we have coming into these things? What are the standards that we're going to keep in order to go out and achieve these goals, to go out and try and, push the limit? And, what is motivating us to decide on those goals? It becomes fascinating, like, to kind of come back to almost the dog food. It was one of the questions I asked was like, was having the punishment there good or bad? And so for me, I almost think it was a bad thing having a punishment, because for me, I'm a little bit different to most people. I was kind of like, how can I challenge myself? Like, how can I mentally challenge myself? And the idea to go and eat dog food is like, I'm not addicted to dog food. I'm not going to eat dog food all the time. But I'm kind of like, this is a bit of a challenge. Like, I enjoy this. And so to know that it wasn't a big thing to draw me away from the goal, and to pull me towards it, meant that maybe punishment isn't the thing. And punishments in the past haven't worked for me. I haven't been motivated by that. And so when you look at like towards a away driven, most people are away driven. Like they kind of want something to run from. And I'd say that in a lot of the goals I had, probably coming back to Ironman, because it was probably the biggest kind of achievement at that point in time, was like I was running from the old version of myself, the idea of someone that I didn't want to be, because there has to be something that motivates you to another level, and everyone's motivation is different. And so maybe one of the best questions to ask yourself is, when you're setting a goal and throughout the year, as you go and follow this goal, you go on the path, is to kind of ask yourself, what's actually making you want to propel forward to do the habits of the goal? Because if you can't really define the success of the outcome of like, what's the purpose of this goal, it makes it really hard to follow through on what you're actually trying to achieve, because we get drawn everywhere. When we kind of focus in on one area, that's talking from a fitness perspective. You were talking about like, there's so many different areas that we can categorize these goals into. Do you feel like there are areas that are more important to set goals in, or do you feel like it's almost like over a couple of years or a couple of months that you should focus on one specific area, or like kind of tackle a few?
Yeah. So again, being coaches as we are, we've been practiced, and we practice and we train to work across people who have different drivers and goals and things like that. So then you were talking a little bit about before about drivers. And so as you personally know with me, it's really hard for me to find a driver, but we've made a career or a business as coaches to learn how to get others to be driven, which is funny, right? I'm not driven, but I can help others get driven.
Yeah. Like, you're driving all the day, all around like Brisbane, but it's like to find the actual driver in your life is sometimes hard to go and find, like in yourself.
Yeah. And so what's the biggest thing then? is it about the category? Are you driven on making sure that your health is right so that other areas are good? Or is it that you recognize that you need a driver because you don't have goals? I guess it's like the chicken or the egg sort of thing.
Yeah.
At the moment. What's kind of your idea for that?
In terms of like the goals or the driver, it's something that I guess I've come to, and part of like the inability to get the success that I was hoping for last year has come down to like question yourself, like what hasn't worked this time, and to really kind of dig into, you know, which area is actually stopping me. You know, is it a belief thing? Is it a trait thing? Is it a skill thing? Is it something that I haven't accepted about it? Is it awareness that I'm missing, or is it an action thing? And the kind of aim is to kind of question what is it that's missing, because sometimes you want to figure out what is the area that you're lacking. And usually there's like a fear or a belief or a story that we tell ourselves that as coaches, what we do is we question and like really dig down. One of the things I like to do is, you know, the truth happens when you question the hell out of something. Like you want to pick the hell out of something. And so if you keep questioning it, eventually you come to a truth of like something that sticks, that no matter how much you question it, it'll stay to a certain point. And that's when you find your truth and your honest thing. And so I think for me was that one of the goals I had last year was 150K, and it's a lot of money, but coming from an engineering perspective, like it didn't seem like a lot. And so it's not that it didn't seem like a lot, because 150K, but it had to be something bigger to motivate me. I think one thing I found as kind of some of the biggest metrics for why people go and do big things is that it could be other people in their life. It could be because of family, it could be because of kids, it could be a charity, it could be a cause that they really care about. Sometimes it's the ability to be the best, to be there's a hidden drive within them that feels that they're not good enough, so they have to be the best in the world. And the other one is like we just want to prove something of ourselves. Like you want to feel like you've achieved something, or that you've been worthy of something in your life. And I think when you feel like what drives you forward is like a point to prove, or the ability to be able to figure out like what's the purpose of the run, or why you do an activity, it's a thing that you want to hold on to, because I guess that's the driver, is the thing that like feeds the action, the behavior, the habit that we do every day. And so for the example of this is, it's like, for me, the purpose of running was to see what I was capable of, to push the limits. And so every time I went out for a run, whether I liked it or not, I could take that driver with me on each run and go and like dig into that. So then when we kind of figure out what the driver is, and what the goal is there something that people should maybe try to avoid when setting goals? Because like so many people set these like big outrageous goals. I remember in the last mastermind that we're at, there's like people that are like, I'm going to make $1 million, and they haven't made 50K. They're putting out these big goals and big projections. I even hinted that in my last video. But what are some of the things that people don't see when they're setting goals or setting intentions?
Yeah, gotcha. So I'm just going to make a quick mention. I know you love 𝗷𝗄𝗆 𝗚𝘁. And there's one. I mean, I guess when we look at successful people or people that we idolize, we take the words that might be important for them, that they want to share to us, a little bit more seriously. And one of the things that 𝗏𝘁, that I remember 𝗏𝘁, I'm pretty sure it was 𝗏𝘁, he said, don't worry about setting goals, just do the work, get the money, and then set your goals later. Not to say that don't set goals, obviously, because I mean health is something that you could do now, but he was talking about business.
Yeah,
and that's what I really liked for me, because at that time, and even now, I still don't have those drivers for me. And so right now I've just got to do the work.
Sure.
The second story that I want to share as well is because you're talking about the two different, essentially two different or basic. I know there's lots of ideas that you can float and that we latch onto and talk about. And this, I'm going to ruin the story a little bit because I don't know word for word, but I believe I probably heard it from a Tony Robbins thing, or obviously a self-help situation. Pretty sure it's in a Tony Robbins book, and it's this scenario. Basically, there's these two brothers. Can't remember if they're twins or similar age, and they were raised in this family. And again, ruining the story. I don't fully know it, but it's just they mentioned that the father is an abusive drunk. Hit their kids and was controlling of their mother. All right. And so you can just kind of extrapolate from there what sort of childhood they would have had together. Right. And from there, when you extrapolate it, you get an idea of like from the age of 7 to 18, they've had this really troubled childhood from an abusive father who was drunk and it didn't give them the life they needed as children to be protected or things like that. Anyway, they put these kids into a study, again, story, and they go 20 years later, they catch up to these two brothers. And so they catch up with one of the brothers, and one of the brothers is super successful, has a family, 4 kids or something like that, and just really loving life, really glad to where he's at, just super successful. They reach out to the other brother, and it's still the same 20 years apart afterwards, and they realize that this brother, the second brother, has gone to prison. He's got, people say tattoos, or just an outcast of society, right? And the interviewers for these two brothers asked this one question: why do you think that you turned out the way that you did? And they both answered exactly the same. How could you not, with the upbringing that I had?
Yeah. Wow. It's a fucking ripper story. It's an incredible story. Like heard it a few times, and that's the power of it. Like, you can tell the power of a story by how often people want to retell it, because there's obviously like a moral or a meaning behind that. And so when that comes to it, what's that big meaning for you of that story? Like, how do you elaborate that in, like, almost like, what's the moral, what's the meaning, what's the Messiah purpose of this big story?
Well, not to lean towards a specific meaning for people who will be viewing this and listening to this. I mean, we take away the meanings that we need right now in the moment. And I remember when I first heard this story, what was very important for me was that even though they had the same upbringing, they had two different views. And from the story, you don't exactly get the view that each brother has, but that you just assume that they have two strongly differing views. And so from that, for me, it was reviewing how I think and what I think of scenarios and what I think about my past, and recognizing that I can either let the past control me, let people control me, let the bad things control me, or I can retell the story for myself and make it mean something more for me.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. It is one of the things when you're trying to analyze the past, when you're really trying to pull apart what has worked or what hasn't, because quite often we attach a meaning to the situation or to the story that we're in. And a lot of people aren't mindful to the story that we do tell ourselves in those moments. And so, like, the question you got to ask myself is, like, is this helping me to move forward? in the direction that I want to go? And if you answer like no, then maybe go find like a 5-year-old, or like maybe go back to the 5-year-old version of yourself. We're not going to say just go and pick up a 5-year-old. However, like go back to the childish point, the point where you had this creativity, and kind of think of what's a better meaning to this story, like, or what's a more empowering meaning, so that when you go and reflect on your 2022 goals and what didn't work and the things that stop people, what are the things that are, you know, holding you back? Like it is the story, an unempowering story almost is one of the things. And stories are one of the most powerful things that we have. They're in movies, they're in like podcasts, they're in books, they are everywhere. Like even at parties, like around New Year's, everyone's got a bloody story. Everyone loves a good story. And so that's what we take meaning from. And so I guess to kind of sum up goals, success, how to set up the year for 2023, what do you feel like in the past, after all these reflections, after all the stories that you've told yourself, what do you think is one of the hot takes or hot tips that has worked for you, that you've seen work for other people, that will allow you to set yourself up for the rest of the year?
Man, it's really tough to supply a general view of this. I think first we have to look inwards and recognize, you know, what is really going to work for us. You know, so, and which is why I'm a little bit weary of, you know, offering guidance when it comes to goal setting. So again, we started talking about, you know, are you away driven or towards driven? Are you focusing on categories? And within those categories, does it scare you? I mean, are you looking to stay skinny and you're scared of being overweight, or vice versa? You know, I would say first, if you haven't done this work before, if you haven't goal set it before, then yeah, first recognize the type of person that you are, and whether or not you need to reach out to a coach or a friend to tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. That's probably the direction. I mean, for the people that have been goal setting and have gained successes from it, then I would say determine where you are in life. Like, do you want to have those bigger, audacious goals? Does that help you? Like, if you were to if you know that you aim for 10 million, knowing that you probably won't, but you'll try to act and level up to that, then does that mean that you earn 1 or 2 million when you've come from zero? So it's probably where I'm going to jump in with that. How about yourself?
Yeah.
What tips can you get these dealers?
Yeah, I love that. Like the two different perspectives, because you're either going to come in with successes or you're not. And I think that is like a really important thing with when you're not coming in with successes, especially if it might feel like months or years since you've actually had success, to have someone in your corner that you trust and that doesn't have judgment, and you're able to ask them. And that's like a really, really hard question. Like, please be honest with me. What is it that I can't see that I need to see to be able to move forward? Like, what is the thing that you need to be so honest with me that if I just saw this thing would actually help me to move forward? So I think that is like a really powerful thing to have someone in your corner like that, to create honesty. So I think that's a massive thing. In terms of the idea of setting up for the year, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. I think you've got to have a big goal and you've got to put it out into the future, and it's got to mean something to you. Like it's got to be something that you don't just kind of like. It's not a 99%. This is like 120%, that like there's a purpose behind this thing. I try to make sure that when I set these goals and I set these intentions, that it's not something that just feels good in the moment, but I check back in a week's time, 2 weeks' time. Is this still connected to what I really, really want? I'm just not saying it for the sake of saying it at that point in time, but find something you really connect to. And then when you have it, to almost put it out in the future, out of reach, out of sight, out of mind. and then come back to what is just the next step? What's the next thing I need to focus on? The habit, the structure, the behavior that leads in that general direction. Because when it kind of came back to the endurance stuff, is I had this idea of the race, the end goal, the finish line, the distance or whatever it was, because I've done a few of these races. And so take the Ironman, you put it out in front of you. You know that that's the goal, and it means something to you because you actually feel like this will change the way you view yourself, change the definition of what your past version of yourself has told you. And then you put it so far out of the way that no one almost really knows that you're talking about it or that you're doing it until people question the actions that you're taking. And when I say question it, they get curious about why you're doing something different. And so they get really, really curious about what you're doing in private, like the runs that you're doing, and maybe why you're not showing up for friends. Like, what are those habits, those tasks that you do every single day that actually get you towards a goal? And for the triathlon, it was doing the runs, it was doing the swims, it was doing the bikes, especially the times when no one else was seeing them. They're the most important things to create success.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
so what's the next step?
What's the next step? Well, the next step is obviously the next podcast, because we want to create more insights, more information. And I think the next step is for you to actually, as soon as you finish this podcast, when you got all the way to the end, is to actually take time, blank time, to actually sit down and plan this stuff out, to take action on it, to not get hyped on the hype. That would be my hot tip, because we don't want to just say things and just put stuff out there for the sake of looking good on social media or podcasts. But one of the things that I really want to see is people go in and achieve the successes that, I've seen in my life, because I know how valuable they are to the character of myself that I've built. What would you say is the next step for people to take from here?
Well, next step is keep your eye out for the next podcast.
just quietly, guys, just quietly.
Yeah. Because we're going to be dropping some gold, and never know when that piece of gold is going to make that life-changing for you, or just a little 1% change or 0.1% change that you need.
Yeah, awesome, Khoi. Love it, brother. Appreciate you making time to sit down and do this podcast. For everyone else that's listening on their drive home, on their way to work, or just while they're running, whatever that is, appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next time. Remember, always go far.